What if one of the oldest stories in the Bible was only a fragment of a much darker account? A story where angels came down to earth, taught forbidden knowledge, created giants, and left behind spirits that may still haunt humanity. Today, we're looking at the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the ancient story that connects fallen angels, giants, forbidden knowledge, and the flood. Let me know in the comments. Do you think the Nephilim were literal giants, symbolic figures, or something else entirely? Before we get to the giants, we have to ask a bigger question. Where did the Book of Enoch come from? And why do so many people describe it as forbidden? The Book of Enoch is an ancient Aramaic apocalyptic text attributed to Enoch, the mysterious figure from Genesis who walked with God and was taken by God instead of dying in the ordinary way. For centuries, the full text was mostly preserved through the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, where it remains part of their biblical canon. Fragments of Enoch were also later found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, proving that this was not some modern invention or internet myth. It was an ancient text known long before our time, so why was it left out of most Bibles? The answer is not as simple as saying it was banned. Different religious traditions developed different canons, and most Jewish and Christian groups did not ultimately include Enoch as scripture. Some likely saw it as too difficult, too visionary, or too far outside the texts they considered authoritative. Others may have been uncomfortable with how much it says about angels, forbidden knowledge, demons, judgment, and the strange events before the flood. That is why Enoch carries such a forbidden reputation today. It sits in that shadowy space between scripture, ancient literature, and cosmic mystery. In most modern Bibles, Enoch himself is only mentioned briefly, but the tradition around him grew into something much larger. Visions of heaven, angelic rebellion, judgment, hidden knowledge, and the secret history of the world before the flood. The book feels close to the Bible, but just outside the boundaries most readers were taught, and that is part of its power. It answers questions that Genesis barely touches, but it does so in a way that opens even more mysteries. The giants did not simply appear out of nowhere. Their story begins with a group of angels known as the Watchers. They were meant to observe humanity, not interfere with it. But according to Enoch, these heavenly beings looked down at the daughters of men and desired them. Their leader, often named Semjaza, knew the others were afraid to act alone, so the Watchers made a pact. They swore an oath together, binding themselves to the same rebellion, so no one could turn back. This was not one angel falling in secret. It was organized. It was deliberate. Then they descended to earth, took human wives, and broke the boundary between heaven and mankind. From that forbidden union came the Nephilim, the mighty ones remembered as giants before the flood. In Enoch, they were not just oversized men or ancient warriors. They were the children of angels and human women, beings that did not fully belong to heaven or earth. And once that line was crossed, the world changed. The Watchers had been sent to observe humanity, but instead, they interfered with it, and the result was a race of giants that would help pull the ancient world toward judgment. But the giants were only part of the problem. According to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers did not just cross into the human world. They brought knowledge with them, knowledge that humanity was never meant to receive in that way. Azazel taught men how to make weapons, blades, shields, and armor. Others taught enchantments, astrology, signs of the heavens, root cutting, sorcery, and hidden arts. This is where the story becomes even darker. The rebellion was not only physical, it was spiritual and technological. The Watchers gave mankind power without wisdom, tools without restraint, and secrets without protection. What may have looked like advancement became corruption. Weapons led to violence. Enchantments led to deception. The heavens themselves became something to manipulate instead of revere. In Enoch, forbidden knowledge becomes a kind of contamination. The angels did not simply fall. They pulled humanity into their fall with them. And as the giants grew stronger and more violent, the earth itself began to suffer under the weight of what had been unleashed. But even this is not the strangest part of the story. The Watchers had fallen. The giants had been born. Forbidden knowledge had spread across the earth. Violence was rising, and the world before the flood was slipping into chaos. But according to the Book of Enoch, the real horror did not end when the giants died. This is where the Book of Enoch turns from mysterious to horrifying. The giants were not portrayed as noble ancient heroes or misunderstood beings. They became violent, ravenous, and impossible to control. According to Enoch, they consumed everything in sight. First, they devoured the food and resources of mankind, then animals, then birds, reptiles, fish, and eventually, human beings themselves. The world was not just troubled by their presence, it was being eaten alive. The giants were the result of a forbidden crossing between heaven and earth. But once they were here, even the Watchers could not control what they had created. Their hunger became a symbol of corruption without limits. They took and took until creation itself cried out under the violence. In this version of the story, the flood does not come out of nowhere. It rises over a world being consumed by beings that should never have existed. In the Book of Enoch, the flood is not just a punishment for human wickedness. It becomes a cleansing of a world that had been corrupted from above and below. The Watchers had crossed into the human realm. The giants had filled the earth with violence, and forbidden knowledge had spread through mankind like a spiritual infection. By the time Noah enters the story, the earth is no longer simply sinful. It is contaminated. The flood becomes the moment creation is washed clean, not only from human rebellion, but from the consequences of angelic interference, corrupted bloodlines, and a world that had been pushed beyond repair. What makes the Book of Enoch even more fascinating is that it does not stand alone. Stories of giants, sky beings, demigods, and powerful beings who came from above appear across many ancient cultures. The Greeks had the Titans. Other traditions speak of giant builders, divine bloodlines, ancient heroes, and beings who brought knowledge from the heavens. Maybe these stories were symbolic. Maybe they were warnings about power, violence, and corruption. Or maybe they preserve fragments of a much older memory, one that different civilizations tried to explain in their own language. That is the question Enoch leaves behind. Were the Nephilim just part of one ancient religious text, or were people all over the world remembering the same strange chapter of human history? At its core, the Book of Enoch is not just a story about giants. It is a warning about what happens when advanced beings interfere with humanity and when knowledge is separated from wisdom. So were the Nephilim literal giants, symbolic warnings, or memories of something humanity was never supposed to forget. The Book of Enoch does not just ask what happened before the flood. It asks whether the consequences of that rebellion ever truly ended. If you want more videos on forbidden texts, ancient mysteries, and unexplained places connected to spiritual history, subscribe to Unexplained Places on Earth and tell me what you think below. Could ancient giants still roam the earth as hungry spirits? Our lead producer here at Unexplained Places on Earth, Marcia Chase, has just finished her first novel, a supernatural thriller that you won't be able to put down. The invitation sounded harmless. A desert gathering promises unity and contact, but Kate can see what the others cannot. As the ceremony opens a doorway beneath the Superstition Mountains, Kate realizes the danger is not invasion, it is consent. Following a trail of symbols, she must uncover the truth behind the false light before the world welcomes in what it was never meant to serve. The battle is not coming. It has already begun. Join the early reader list. Get your free reader's guide. Echoes of Modern Tech in Ancient Texts. Follow the QR code link